that was our attempt at kicking the theme song intro. Rehearsals fell through. We didn't get as well oiled as we had hoped. How are you, man?
I'm good. I'm tired. Comic-Con wears you out, man.
I would imagine for you, your schedule has got to be pretty busy. I would think it's been, you've been running around.
Yes. You know, I tried to go in disguise today with my Mets cap, but people recognize me anyway. So even without my regular hat, so there I am. But you know, it's wild. I've been coming to Comic-Con since 87.
87. Here, grab a seat, George. Grab a seat.
There used to be 5,000 people here. We thought it was big.
Now, in 1987, because 87 is years before the books hit shelves. So at that point, you're not here as the George R.R. that we know today. I mean, I'm sure you were popular back then, but it had to have been a little bit of a different experience in 87.
Okay, well, in 87, I was working for television. I was on a show called Beauty and the Beast. I was writing episodes for that, for Vincent and Catherine and all that stuff, and I was still doing some short stories and novelettes. I published 4 novels, but no, Game of Thrones was still like at least 4 years in the future before I started writing that.
So talk to me a little bit about some of the differences, because obviously, I mean, you can literally see it each year. This event gets a bit bigger, and it breaches from the convention center into parking lots and the city streets. Over these years, how has this changed? And being a fan of this world of Comic-Con type material, how exciting it must be to see.
You know, it is exciting. I mean, it's like today's Comic-Con takes over the entire city of San Diego. It used to be in '87. It was in the old convention center, which is now called the Civic Center, up by the Westgate Hotel. It was all in that one Civic Center and about 3 hotels, and it was mostly guys selling comic books from cardboard boxes. And you know, I would wander the floor and buy a couple copies of Classics Illustrated, and oh yeah, I need that 1 issue of Spider-Man to complete my collection. I can't do that anymore. No. Those guys are still there, though. You can still find, I think it's the same guys with the same cardboard boxes. That's it. They got them in a corner now. They don't put them out in the middle of the floor, but they're still there. And you know, you should go by and buy some comic books from them, because they're the guys who started all of this madness.
Do you still collect comic books? Is it still a passion and a hobby of yours?
I still have my collection. I can't keep up. There's so many comic books these days. So many different publishers. It was easy in the old days. It was just a handful of publishers. But I still have my collection, but I can't say I keep up with the old stuff. I was actually the first comic book convention fan, because even before San Diego, the first comic book convention, the first Comic-Con, was 1964, New York City, Greenwich Village. Len Wein, who would go on to create Wolverine, Swamp Thing, and the new X-Men. He was a high school kid. He ran that convention, and I was the first guy to sign up for it. So my badge was #1 at the first comic book convention in 1964, which makes me the first comic book fan.
That's on your business card underneath, right? Those are my first comic book.
We went in there, and there were like 30 guys attending it, and the only professionals there, fabulous Flo Steinberg, who was Stan Lee's secretary, came, and we got to meet her, and Steve Ditko came. And we met Steve Ditko, and I think we must have scared him, because he hasn't come back since. So 1964, meeting the 30 of us there in that Greenwich Village Hotel, obviously traumatized Steve, but we had a great time, and they gave out some original art, and people had, you know, it was all in one room. There was no dealer's room, or all the panels were in the same room as the 3 guys who were selling comic books from cardboard boxes, and you know, it was but it was a great experience. And look what is growing into.
It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. No matter how many times you come, it's an unreal event. This has to be such. I mean, going through this history and looking back into the '60s and you being a part of these. I mean, you can't even use the word convention. To now, today, to not only the size, but you being on stage and not being the guy buying a comic book from a box on the side of the street. I mean, that transition, what's this like being on this side? I mean, because you're a fan of, I mean, you must walk around and see the different shows and things, and I mean, I'm sure you're a fan of all the projects that are happening here. But at the same time, you've got hundreds of people who are dying to get a chance to share their love and appreciation of your work. How's that been?
You know, it's great. But there's an edge to it too, I got to admit. You know, even really nice people coming up to you and saying that they love you can wear you down when there's just so many of them. And the truth is, I miss aspects of what I used to do at Comic-Con. I can't walk the floor anymore because, you know, if I do walk the floor, I have to be surrounded by security, which feels weird to me.
Yeah.
I still don't think of inside me, there's still that 13-year-old kid who wants to get the issue of Spider-Man that he's missing to complete his collection, and wants to be able to wander and look at the exhibits without, you know, having to sign an autograph everywhere you go. But you know, realistically, I can't do that anymore. But I miss that aspect. But I understand this, and the truth is that I know in an audience like this, there are aspiring writers, there are aspiring artists, and you know, 20, 30 years from now, someone who's standing out here right now will be up here. And you know, it's a cyclical thing. There'll be one of you out here is probably going to be a writer who's going to have a hit television show at some point, or an artist who's going to win some Eisner Awards, or some 13-year-old kid who's going to be up telling a story about once they were at the San Diego Comic-Con and they heard George R.R. Martin predict that they're going to be famous, because the field is cyclical. So I don't know who it's going to be. But, there, we have a nominee right there.
All right, no, we cracked that case. Very good.
That's right, very good.
Everybody else can relax. You're not going to be famous. Right.
So that's cool.
In a way, it's maybe the most kind of unselfish thing that you can do, in the sense of that you give up a passion and a kind of an anonymity to be able to provide all of these people and the thousands that aren't here today with something that is so important that they look forward to so much. And I mean, you know, kudos to you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, you can make some noise. We are just breaking the ice. We're just getting things started. Of course, George R.R. Martin hanging out right now at Superhero Headquarters. But we have some business to take care of. It's not all fun today.
Yes, we do.
We have some crowning to be done.
We have some royalty.
Royalty.
You have to be very respectful of royalty.
I should have dressed up. You've got suspenders. I don't have a tie or anything. I feel underdressed for such royalty.
Of course, these are brave people to be crowned by me. Because you know what happens to kings and queens in Game of Thrones.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
So we're going to crown them today, and next year we'll have their heads on spikes.
Oh, this just in, our king and queen have run. All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, what I'm going to do first is bring up all of our finalists from our cosplay contest. We're going to save the king and queen, of course, for the big final entrance. But these are our finalists. We're going to welcome them to the stage. Please put your hands together for all of our cosplay finalists who entered our contest over the last few days. We want to thank them once again so much. We'll get you guys just to line up here behind. Oh, excellent. Look at this. Only respect.
Wow, great.
Keep those hands clapping as each one of these costumes makes their way up. A familiar face indeed. Now, of course, some of our cosplay contestants here yesterday were in full costume. Today, they've been nice enough to come back and be a part of the crowning ceremony. Is that all of our finalists? We have our queen, who's going to be making her way up today. Yesterday, she was dressed up as, remember Mars Attacks?
Yes, indeed.
Great movie.
Yes.
She was dressed up as one of the...
I had the trading card. It was trading cards first. I had the trading cards way before the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do you remember the lady with the giant hair who kind of walked like, you know, like that? She had a fantastic match. Today, she's playing it up to the judges. Welcome. Please welcome to the stage our queen of the Courtyard Cosplay Contest. is, of course, our king making his way to the stage. All the fans of Robot Chicken, please make some noise. Fantastic. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at first we are going to crown our queen of our Courtyard Cosplay Contest. George, do you want me to hold the microphone? Sure. All right, we have our sash and crown, and what, I can't think of a better moment. This is it, right here, live on the Courtyard stage. George R.R. Martin officially crowning our Courtyard Cosplay Queen.
Your Majesty.
Fantastic. George will grab a couple of photos with you and the Queen. For all of our fans out there, get at your cameras. We'll snap a picture with both George and our Queen together. Oh my goodness.
George, look at me.
She's smiling for the photo, and inside she's like, oh my God. How about a round of applause for our Queen at the Courtyard Cosplay Contest? You cannot have a queen without a king and a Robot Chicken. We know the crown does fit on that chicken head. George will get you now to present our king with both the sash and crown.
Here we go. And let's see.
Very nice. We're going to get Robot Chicken, a.k.a. our king, a.k.a. Chris, to pose with George for a couple of photo ops.
Look at me here, guys. Up here, guys. Very nice.
As we grab these photos, once again, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank so much all of our contestants, and of course, congratulate once again our king and queen. All right, we're going to grab a photo now with our king, queen, and George together. Our queen is Elisa Teague, and our king is Chris Monfiletto. Once again, put your hands together, our king, our queen, and George R.R. Martin. Now, we want to congratulate our king and queen, who not only are going to win bragging rights, a sash, a crown, and this opportunity to be crowned by the king himself, but they have won themselves Platinum Elite status at Courtyard Hotels by Marriott. Very nice, congratulations. Tons of unbelievable benefits that go along with that. You will be treated truly like a king and queen with your Platinum Elite status. As well, you guys will get one-on-one time with George inside our Courtyard pod located right over here. More importantly, there's air conditioning in there, guys. So that's going to be good. Why don't we get all our finalists just to join in here for one group photo before we sit down with George once again.
Here, how about come in front and check it?
Remember, I know,
There we go.
showing up.
Great costumes, guys. Great costumes.
I'll go low.
Okay, here, George. Okay, here, George. Michael. Yeah, tell me when.
All right, guys, another 5-10 seconds to grab those photos. This is what it is all about, man. The sun is shining in San Diego, Comic-Con. We got George R.R. Martin with all of our finalists, our king, our queen. Once again, put your hands together and make some noise. All right, we will ask all of our finalists to please make their way off stage. We'll keep our king and queen up there for just a moment. As they exit the stage, we want to thank them once again so much for being a part of our contest this year. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you want a chance to join us on stage next year, make sure you find our judges, the Hound. Unreal. This is awesome. And of course, the last to exit our new royalty. I don't know if you guys read the fine print, but you actually do have to get married now. Which I should have told you before this contest started. My bad. So many other announcements to make. Robot chicken. That is a crazy combination for a king and queen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you to our king and queen. As they head off, you guys will be joining George in just a little bit inside the block for some one-on-one time. Very cool. Congratulations yet again. We've got a whole stack of fan questions. We're still taking late submissions. If you haven't had a chance to submit, all you got to do is jump on Twitter at Courtyard Hotels, type your question to George with the hashtag CYSuperheroHQ, and you can get your question asked. Well, that little bit different than the kings and queens you're used to, or at least the king.
But that robot chicken head will look good on a spike. Actually, you know, I was on Robot Chicken. They had my fans tear me to pieces. So it's time I got revenge with NJ.
I've got some questions here from the fans, and a lot of people obviously have questions about the writing process and the show. I want to go a little bit further back and kind of start a little bit earlier, because I find it's always interesting to talk about the George R.R. Martin before things kind of took off. When did you know that you wanted to be a writer, that you had a passion for writing? Was it something since you were a kid?
Yeah, that's really two different answers, though. I had a passion for writing as long as I could remember. Even when I was a little kid, I wrote little monster stories and sold them to other kids in the neighborhood. And
how much would a story go for in those?
A nickel.
A nickel. A nickel.
So if I sold 2 stories, I could get a comic book.
So
they were 10 cents in those days, and that's what they still should be.
So you probably, when you made the deal with HBO, you were looking at like a quarter or 50 cents.
Right, yeah, it really went up, you know, from
inflation.
But even when I was writing those stories and selling them, I didn't really think I'd be a writer, because I thought I'd be like an astronaut or maybe a superhero, but you know, I kept failing to get superpowers. So that was a real drawback, you know. I did consider going like the Batman or Green Arrow route. I took archery once, figuring I could be Green Arrow, but I couldn't hit the target. So that was a drawback.
That would be a problem.
Yeah, that was not working.
I'll save you eventually.
So at some point I gave up on being a superhero and/or an astronaut and decided, you know, I'm probably better writing about this stuff than actually trying to live it. So I started writing and sending it to comic fanzines initially. I was there right at the birth of comic fandom, and we had these fanzines, these amateur magazines that were mimeographed or produced on a process called Ditto, which involved pans of gelatin and stencils and produced these strange purple things, and that's where my earliest stories appeared, about superheroes and stuff like that. You know?
So you've always been drawn to the world of heroes and fantasy and superpowers and that genre. Yeah.
Weird stuff, my father called it. Science fiction, fantasy, horror, comic books, superheroes, all that weird stuff.
What did your dad do?
He was a longshoreman.
A longshoreman. So very different path when you're trying to tell him that you have this interest in.
Yes. He liked westerns.
Right.
I don't think he ever read a book after high school. But he liked to watch movies and TV shows, mostly westerns. So we watched a lot of westerns in our house. You know, so I learned all the these guys did the Game of Thrones theme songs. So I always knew, you know, like that Have Gun Will Travel theme song and Maverick and all that, Cheyenne, you know, all the westerns of my youth.
So you're growing up, you had this passion for writing, You realize this is something you want to do. At what point did what we know from the television side of things, like the Game of Thrones series, did that start to take shape? When did that kind of process begin? You started to move into that world and those characters. Do you remember kind of those original moments of starting to create that story?
Yeah, that's 1991, the summer of 1991. I remember it very precisely. I'd already been a writer for 20 years at that point. I had a career in television and film, working on shows like Twilight Zone and Beauty and the Beast. I published 4 novels and maybe 70 or 80 short stories. I've won major awards.
So successful and making a living and doing what you love.
And I was still in 91, I was still right in the middle of my Hollywood years, as it was said. But I didn't have a current assignment that summer. So I thought, well, it's been 4 or 5 years since I did my last novel, let me do a novel. And I started this science fiction novel that I've been planning for some time. And I was writing very well, and then just one day the idea for what would be the first chapter of Game of Thrones just came to me. It just came to me so vividly that I knew I had to write it. So I put the other book aside, put it in the drawer. It's been there ever since. And I wrote this chapter, which I knew wasn't part of what I was working on. I didn't know what it was part of, but it's the chapter where they find the direwolf pups in the summer snow. I knew it was the summer snow. I didn't know a lot about it. So where did that come from? I don't know. Sometimes the hardest question you can ask any writer is where you get the ideas, because there's no answer to it. You know, they come from the subconscious, from the left brain, right brain, you know, whatever, from some brain, or maybe from a muse if you're in ancient Greece. But it's just like one day there is no idea, and then suddenly there is an idea. And where the hell did it come from? Who knows? But it's there, and if it's a good idea, and you're smart, you'll follow it.
Well, we're thankful that you followed it. I think it's safe to say that we're thankful. All right, I want to dive into a couple of fan questions. This is from @OmniDocs. Regina. Is Regina out there at OmniDocs? Yeah? There you go, right here front and center. In your writing process, if you ever get what people call writer's block, whatever that may mean to you, how do you find inspiration? What do you do when you kind of hit that wall? Different techniques to kind of work around it. What's the process there?
I don't actually get writer's block in the conventional sense, where I can't write for long periods of time. I do get derailed by distractions, because I do my best writing when I'm not distracted. So I have assistants. I say don't put through any phone calls. Don't answer the door. I don't want to know what came in the mail. Just leave me alone and let me write. That's when I get my best work done. I'm not like some writers who can write while on the road or at hotels or on things. So some people do that. I can't do that. I've tried, but I can't do it. But when I do get stuck, especially on a project like Game of Thrones, the best thing I find to do is to rewrite. I mean, there are always, if I'm trying to write a Tyrion chapter and I'm not making any progress with it, I'll go back and I'll reread the last 3 Tyrion chapters that I've already finished. And in the course of rereading them, I almost inevitably rewrite them, and I start polishing the prose and changing things and saying, oh no, that's awful, let me fix that. And by the time I'm finished rewriting it, I've built up a certain amount of downhill momentum, and it carries over into the next chapter, and I start going again.
What shows are you into right now? On a weeknight, is there anything? Because obviously, Sunday night for a lot of us is a pretty big night. We know to tune in, and DVRs are set. What shows are you kind of? This is I can't miss blank. Anything right now?
Well, God, I mean, we're living in the golden age of television. I know that's often referred to in the early 50s, and that was a golden age of television. But with the proliferation of studios and networks and channels providing original content, there's more interesting television on right now than there's ever been on in all of history. I'm a big fan of all of the shows that are up against us for the Emmy. Breaking Bad, it's a brilliant, brilliant show, and it's kicked our ass in the Emmy last year, and it may kick our ass again. I hope not. I'd like to defeat them, but that's a tough show. It's a great show. Mad Men is a great show. You know, Walking Dead's not up for an Emmy, but it's a terrific show. Orphan Black, love Orphan Black. I don't know how the hell the Tatiana, the star of that, did not get nominated for an Emmy. That's an incredible injustice. And there's some amazing shows that are coming down the pike. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and right outside of town, WGN channel has built 1943 Los Alamos, and they're filming a show called Manhattan about the development of the atom bomb. And I had the privilege of attending a screening of the first 2 episodes of that just last week before I get here. And it's going to be a terrific show. One of the stars of it is Harry Lloyd, who some of you may remember. He was Viserys Targaryen. I poured molten gold over his head and killed him.
You have molten gold on a human head!
But he's got another job now, and he's doing well. And I'm glad to see that, you know, Sean Bean is working again.
And I'm sure you noticed the hashtag.
I have that, yeah. Don't kill Sean Bean, yeah. And don't, he's a nice guy. He's a wonderful actor. He was marvelous as me.
I have to say, not only as a fan, but I remember watching that first season. I'm sure you guys had the ones. For those of us that hadn't read the books, when that episode came, spoiler alert. Although if you haven't seen the first season yet, I mean, you got to deal with this. We're going to talk about it. When Sean Bean's character was killed, it took me an episode and a half. I was convinced that it had to have been he was going to come back in some way. It was a dream sequence. It was something. I had never seen a show where the lead character, where the main person, who was a face that we all knew from movies and film, and you kind of said, "Oh, this is Sean Bean's show," and then he's gone. We're halfway through the first season and our main character is gone, and I was like, this is getting cool. And you kind of, I noticed it on Boardwalk Empire and other shows now where these main characters are getting knocked off. You really kind of changed television in a way that the traditional, what we would consider the main character, doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be in it from season 1 till done.
Well, yes, and you know, they say you write what you want to read, and you know, you create in television what you want to watch, and I love shows that are unpredictable. I love Jeopardy to be more real. Predictable shows bore me. Predictable books bore me. You know, they're fun. I mean, growing up, I mentioned my father's like westerns. You know, longest running show in television history, Gunsmoke, ran for 20 years. You know, and I must have watched like 15 of those. Growing up, and Gunsmoke was a well-acted and well-written show, but 20 years, nothing happened. You know, Marshall Dillon was there in the marshal's office, and Doc was playing chess and being grumpy, and Miss Kitty was there for Long Branch, and yeah, they did change deputies at one point. That was, yeah, whoa, yeah,
hold on your hats.
But you know, basically every episode somebody would come to town and there would be some problem, and at the end of the episode it would be resolved, and the next episode they'd be right back where they started for 20 years. That's not the kind of show I want to watch. I want to watch shows where you're on the edge of the seat, where we can't wait to see what happens next and say, oh my God, you know, next week I have to wait a whole week to find out whether this guy is alive or dead. How are they going to resolve this mystery? I mean, that's the kind of stuff I love to watch, I love to read, and that's the kind of stuff I try to make. It's not easy, it's hard to make some of that stuff, but I try.
It's working. I mean, I know everybody would agree. It's, you're talking about 20 years. We miss one episode. It's like, I can't go on Facebook for a week until I see the episode because it's just going to get ruined. I'm like, I can't, no, I didn't see your post. I didn't see Game of Thrones on Sunday. I can't go on social media. It's going to get ruined. We got another fan question here from @Farrah Rochelle. Where's Rochelle? Where's Rochelle? There she is up there. Who was your inspiration when you created the Starks? Is that, I don't know if that's a nice if that was based on me, if I'd feel happy about that.
Well, yes. I mean, in a broad sense, of course, I stole freely from history. You know, the basic plot of part of Game of Thrones is based on the Wars of the Roses. So the two principal contenders there were the noble families of the Yorks and the Lancasters, and you may notice a certain similarity to the Starks and the Lannisters. But of course, I changed things around too. And the individual Starks are not based on any individual members of the York or Lancaster dynasty, but are amalgamations of this and that, and just some kind of character who engaged me.
All right, a couple of fun ones here, very fitting for Comic-Con. We've got at SDCCNOOB. Who's that? Could you not? Was there not a shorter Twitter handle available? And just they mashed the keypad and they were like, "That's my handle." That person wants to know, Batman or Superman?
Ooh. Spider-Man.
Growing up, was he always your favorite? Was
well, as for a single hero, yeah, I like teams, the Fantastic Four. I read comics, I read the DC comics, a lot of other comics as a kid, and then got around the age of, 11 or so, I decided I was too old for comic books, and got out of reading it for like 2 years, and then Marvel came along and sucked me back in, just when you think you're out, they drag you back in, yes. And it was Fantastic Four #4, which I picked up, and just to cover, who the hell are these people? What is this team? And one of them is a monster. That was really interesting to me. So I love the Fantastic Four. The Thing in particular, those early issues of Fantastic Four were really powerful because, like, unlike Gunsmoke, things were changing, and there was real conflict there, which you weren't used to happen. I mean, in DC at the time, I read Justice League. I loved the DC heroes too, but like, they all got along. They were all perfectly nice. They were all, hi Fred, hi Bill, let's go out and fight a villain together. Okay, but like, the Thing was threatening to rip off the Human Torch's head, and there was a sex triangle going on here, a romantic triangle between Reed and Sue and Prince Namor. I'd never seen anything like this in comics before, so I loved the Fantastic Four, and that was where my first words that appeared in professional print were published. In Fantastic Four #20, they published my letter about Fantastic Four #17, where basically I said, Shakespeare, move over, Stan Lee has arrived.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we're here right now with George R.R. Martin. We're hanging out, we're taking questions from the crowd. For those of you passing by, jump in. We've still got a little bit of time. Another one with that kind of Batman, Superman, and this is a question that popped up yesterday. We were hanging out with Greg Nicotero and Norman Reedus, and it's always neat when you get a chance to meet, we were hanging out with Norman, and he was so excited. He was like, oh, I got to meet George R.R. Martin, and I love Game of Thrones, and here's this guy that we know through the television world as his character on this show who's a fan of yours and was so excited to meet you. We asked him, Star Trek or Star Wars? What do you think about that? People aren't yelling out their answers. It's like it's like Star Trek. Like that's the right answer. What do you think?
Forbidden Planet. I own a movie theater in Santa Fe, New Mexico, the Jean Cocteau Cinema. It was an old movie theater I bought and it had been closed for 7 years, but I reopened it last August. And the first movie we began with was Forbidden Planet, classic 1956 MGM science fiction spectacular. And for you Star Trek fans out there, hey, Star Trek was a lot of fun. Roddenberry stole everything from Forbidden Planet. Long before the Enterprise, there was the C-57D, and Commander Adams before Captain Kirk, and his doctor and his first officer forming a triad investigating the ancient demise of the race of the Krell. And there was Robbie the Robot there, who is like the best robot in science fiction history, man. You can keep R2-D2 and give me Robbie the Robot anytime. I have Robbie the Robot. You can see him at my Jean Cocteau Theater. I bought a full-size replica of him from Fred Barton, the Robot Man, and he knows all the dialogue to Forbidden Planet and Robbie's other roles. So I love me some Robbie.
I'm kind of liking this where we give you two choices and you pick a cool third one that wasn't close. Let's see if we can complete the trilogy. Superpower, flying or invisibility?
Ooh, that's hard. I like both of those.
But keeping in mind, you can pull a George R.R. Martin and name a third. We branded that now. When you name something that isn't a choice, it's doing a George.
Yeah, well, you know, when I was a kid, the power I really wanted was Green Lanterns. I wanted to find this ring that I would be able to put on, and it would give me the power to do anything that I could imagine, as long as it was green. Also, finding a ring seemed to me less painful than like the Flash, because I didn't want to be actually hit by a lightning bolt. And being bitten by a radioactive spider sounded like it could lead to blood poisoning and things like that. You know, I always had this caution. I knew I didn't come from another planet like Superman, and you know, Batman, all that working out in the gym, you know, it seemed really hard. But just finding this magic ring would be really cool. So, and there was such a huge array of powers here. I mean, included flying, and it included invisibility.
And not having to work out. I mean, you just instantly was off.
Right, yeah. Wow, I got a ring. And the one thing that frustrated me about Green Lantern is like all he could think was to make giant green fists. I could think of better things like that even at 12, but that was the one thing, you know, I always had this impulse toward realism. And, you know, you see that in Game of Thrones. People say it's more realistic than other fantasies. Even as a 12 or 13-year-old kid reading comic books, that came to me. I mean, I would read the Fantastic Four and say, the Human Torch is, like, really cool, but how come he never, like, burns anyone? I mean, if I knew some bullies in school, I would have just fried their asses. It was like the torch never dawned on him. He made like cages and fists of flame and all that. How about just frying the guy? You know, that's me.
That's right. Yeah, the episode will be over in 5 minutes, and then 25 minutes of commercials. And
that's right.
Question from Courtney Malinsky. Where's Courtney? Courtney. This, I mean, your favorite character from the series. Let's reword that in the sense of, are there any characters that kind of maybe ring a little bit more true to you, or that you enjoy writing for the most?
Well, I love all my characters, of course, but Tyrion has always been the easiest to write. You know, maybe I'm inside, I'm secretly a very acerbic kind of person. Yep. The only thing that's hard is it takes me days and sometimes weeks to come up with the one-liners that Tyrion closes up in a minute. So I wish in real life I was nearly as acerbic and funny as Tyrion.
Everyone must die.
I did cut off his nose, so.
If you were a character on the show, who would you be?
Well, I would probably be Samuel Tarly. I love Sam too. He's a great character. We have John Bradley West who plays him. He's a marvelous actor. But you know, he's you know, Tyrion might be who I want to be, but that Sam is probably closer to who I actually am. The fat kid who loves to read books and doesn't like to walk up a lot of stairs.
We've got a question here at Ranker of Thrones. If you were a character on the show, how would you kill yourself off? How do you see your epic journey on Game of Thrones coming to an end? You can't use a spike. No spikes. How do you want to go out?
Well, you know, I just said Tyrion was the guy I wanted to be here, and he's asked this very question in one of the books, and it's also in the show. I don't know. Anyone under the age of 14 here, please cover your ears.
Earmuffs. Earmuffs.
You know, when one of the Hill tribes says, Tyrion, son of Tywin, how would you like to die? And he answers, you know, at the age of 90 with a belly full of wine and a girl's mouth around my cup.
You can take the earmuffs off now. Remove the earmuffs. All right, here's one. Well, actually, I have a question for you first. The transition from writing a book and the amount of love and passion that goes into something like that, and then all of a sudden it's getting turned into a series. And for everything that transitions to television, there has to be some compromises. Certain things have to change. But yet there's a story that you've crafted and written for a reason. What's that process like in the sense of, and how's it been working alongside HBO in being able to adapt this to the screen? Because obviously, for the people that read the books and people that watch the show, there are some differences, and for good reasons. But how do you work with that? How do you kind of handle that process? And sometimes you just have to say, I got to put my foot down on certain things.
Well, you know, it is. I've worked in television and film, so I've been on the other side of the process, which gave me a certain sense of proportion when this comes up. I think some novelists and book authors don't have that sense of proportion, and they react with a lot of trauma when they sell something to movies and things get changed. Sometimes that trauma is actually justified because the thing has changed beyond recognition, and the people doing an adaptation don't actually recognize why the original material works, and make far more changes than they have to make. You see that, sadly, in a number of comic book movies. I mean, I've commented on my blog that, you know, you can look at all the Marvel movies, say, and almost rank them as the ones that work best, or the ones that stick closest to the way Stan Lee did it. Most of the guys who start to try that, well, I'll improve over what Stan Lee did in 1967, don't improve, in fact. But it's a case of who you get into business with. And I turned down offers to do Game of Thrones as a feature film and all that, because I was in a fortunate position of having a best-selling series and being financially secure. I did not need the money.
Which had to be tough, because Lord of the Rings at that time was kind of in the process of turning into a movie series, and was obviously doing big box office and all of these things.
Lord of the Rings was huge, yes, and the first one come out, and they've done very well, and suddenly every fantasy series, every best-selling fantasy series in sight was being optioned by one studio and another, because they were all saying, well, we want our own Lord of the Rings too. Where's our Lord of the Rings? Well, we'll buy this one, we'll buy that one. They were combing the bestseller list, and a number of people came to me. But my books are bigger than Lord of the Rings. They're just physically bigger. There are more characters. It's a longer story. There are more settings. There are more battles. There's more of everything. The entire 3 books that Tolkien wrote, as brilliant as they are, could be fit into, one of my books. And I was able to say no until I found the right partnership. And the right partnership was David Benioff and Dan Weiss, our showrunners, who are brilliant and have done an amazing job with the adaptation, and HBO, who is, not that I'm prejudiced or anything, but they're the best outfit doing television out there. I mean, come on. Not just Game of Thrones, but 6 Feet Under, Deadwood, Rome, The Sopranos. They've reinvented genres. They've revitalized the genres. They've done amazing shows. Every year they win more Emmys than everybody else combined. You couldn't be in business with better people than HBO. But even at that point, at a certain point, you have to step back and you have to say, I got 2 more books to write. The books is what I'm doing. The show is what they're doing. And I do that with all of my licensees. I mean, the series of books has been successful enough that I have a lot of licenses. There's a guy who makes miniature figurines. There's a guy who makes replica swords. There's a guy who makes coins that he does on an old-fashioned coin press in his basement. There are big companies that do video games and companies that do card games and board games. I have a little bit of involvement in each of these. I've, weighed, should I go into business with this guy or not? I've looked at their products. I sometimes approve, certain sketches or concept art, but I can't be involved with all of these things every day. So at a certain point you have to say, okay, I trust you, go ahead, you do your job, you do the swords, you do the miniatures, you do the card games, I'm going to step back. And it's the same thing for television, I'm involved to some extent. I often write a script per season, although I'm not doing it for season 5 because I'm kind of busy at the moment.
Where are things with the new season right now? Obviously, we're a few weeks out of the finale. An amazing season, by the way. Just tons of unbelievable moments, exploding heads. There's about 2 weeks where I woke up screaming in bed from that because my eyes getting pushed.
Pedro was fine. Have you seen him here? He's good.
We have not seen him here, but it's good to know he's all right. How are things? Where are you guys in the process? Have you gone to camera yet, or are you in pre-production?
They've just started shooting, I believe in Northern Ireland. They're going to be using Northern Ireland this year, which is our main location. But we're also using Dubrovnik and other cities in Croatia, one of the most beautiful and unknown places on Earth to Americans. And for the first time, we're shooting in Spain. So Spain is amazing. So we'll get some great shots there.
Do you spend the majority of the time on set? I mean, you were saying that you don't necessarily write all the episodes now, but are you still?
I never wrote all the. I wrote one episode per season, but
right.
David and Dan write most of the episodes, and the brilliant Brian Cockman, our story editor, usually does 1 or 2 per season as well. I visit the set very seldom. I have made some visits. I visited Belfast and Scotland and Malta and Morocco, all in past years. But I haven't actually been over there for a couple of years because, again, I'm just too busy. And so David and Dan are on the set, one or the other. Even when we're shooting simultaneously in 2 countries, one of them is in one place, another one is in another place, supervising things. And I worked in television, as I said, on Beauty and the Beast, and before that on Twilight Zone, and it's a full-time job. I mean, it's not a little part-time thing here. If I wanted to be on set all the time and take a more active role in the show, I would pretty much have to stop writing the books and fly over there and be there every day, be in the writer's room and be on the set and be meeting with the special effects guys and art concept guys and costume designers. I mean, it's a full-time job. Yeah. It's hard work being a television showrunner.
It's got to be nice knowing you've got such an amazing team and the fact that
it's incredible.
You can trust what's going on there. We got about 10 minutes left, so I'm thinking maybe we should open it up to you guys live for some questions about things that you want to know. Are you good with that? We hit the crowd for a couple of questions. Yeah, right up here, front and center. We've got a question. Other than your own, what's a favorite book of yours? Something that you've enjoyed reading over the years?
Well, Lord of the Rings, certainly. Lord of the Rings and Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien had a profound effect on me and really changed my life back when I read it when I was like 13. I reread that book every few years. Another book, not a genre book, but one that I go back to quite frequently is The Great Gatsby, which I think is a great American novel, The green light at the end of Daisy's dock, I'm still chasing myself.
Did you see the movie?
Yeah, I love the movie.
Yeah, you liked it?
I love the movie.
Okay, I wasn't sure where you were going to go with that.
It's so much better than the older movie.
Yes. Excellent. We have another question right up here. Oh, sorry, right over here, and we'll get to you next, and right up here.
Where did you get your inspiration for the Dust Rocket?
Sorry?
Where did you get your inspiration for the Dust Rocket?
Where did you get your
Dust Rocket? Oh, well, I basically drew on history. I mean, the Dothraki are a combination of the horse cultures of Asia and the steppes. Most people rightly say they're inspired by the Mongols and Genghis Khan, and certainly there's a lot of that there. But also the much earlier Attila and the Huns, who were one of the first people to come out of the steppes and invade Europe, and there were other tribes, the Tartars and the Alans. There's some of Amerindian tribes in there, the Sioux and the Cheyenne. Those horse cultures, all cultures built around a horse. So I took bits of all of those for the Dothraki. And I also added some fantasy elements, which is, what you do in fantasy. You start with Hadrian's Wall, which is, like 50 miles long and 10 feet high, and you make it 100 miles long or 300 miles long and 700 feet high and made of ice and magic. So it's kind of cooler in fantasy. I did the same with Dothraki. I took all these existing cultures and blended them together and added some truly fantastic elements to make a culture that I hopefully thought was a little original. But yeah.
Did you always have an interest and a kind of passion for history? Because I mean, just in the time we've been hanging out today, obviously so many characters, so many elements have a historical base. Is it just research, or is it something that you kind of had a passion for?
No, I love history. Yeah. I love history. When I was in college, I was a journalism major, writing and all that stuff, but history was my minor. I'm not a historian by any means. Academic history, studying the spread of crop rotation in Europe in 1730 to 1760 doesn't interest me. But what does interest me is the wars and the battles and the betrayals, and history is just full of stories, wonderful stories that a writer can steal from because they really happened, or at least someone said they really happened, and you can get great ideas here. I'm constantly reading popular history books, old or new, and then saying to my wife, "You can't make this shit up. This is just great. Look at this, what happened here." And it's usually appalling stuff. But yeah, I draw a lot of history.
If you weren't doing this, what would you be doing? What a different career? Where would you see yourself? What's the dream job in another industry?
I think if I wasn't writing, I would probably be teaching. I was a teacher for a few years in the 70s at a small Catholic girls' college in Dubuque, Iowa. And I actually loved it. I loved working with kids and teaching journalism and English literature and science fiction and creative writing. It was a small college, so if you majored in journalism, you got 4 years of me teaching all the courses. But I was advisor to the school paper too, which was like constantly getting me in trouble with the administration. But I loved it. But the one thing I found is that I wrote very little during those years, so I ultimately had to come to the decision and say, much as I like teaching, I got to get out of it, or I'm never going to write the books and stories that I dream of writing.
Do you have students tracking down, "Mr. Martin, remember me"?
Yeah, they do occasionally. Yeah. And a lot of them have gone on to careers in journalism, which I take a certain amount of pride in.
There you go. Right over here in the corner. I'm sorry.
He's asking about a character in the TV show. You really have to ask David and Dan that one.
One second, we'll get right back over here. Yes.
Can I get an autograph for my mom?
We'll work on that in a moment. Yes, sir. You have a love of comics. Any?
Yes. As a matter of fact, we have 3 wildcard graphic novels in the works. They're not adaptations. These are original graphic novels about wildcard characters set in the world. Standalones. Each of them will be about equivalent to 6 issues of a monthly comic. But I don't think we'll do them as monthly comics. We'll do them strictly as. Well, Wild Cards is under option for feature film with Universal, and we've had a couple drafts of the script, and we're working on another draft of the script. But I've long ago learned in TV and film many things are developed, a few things are actually shot. So I tend not to make announcements until actually the cameras start rolling. But we're working on the script. Universal seems very gung-ho. As some of you may have noticed, the superhero movies do rather well, and Universal is the only major studio that doesn't have a superhero franchise or universe, so they see Wild Cards as that. And if we can get it going, that would be wonderful. And we could be sitting here in a few years with Golden Boy and the Turtle and Lohengrin and the Amazing Bubbles, or the actors playing them. And maybe people will be cosplaying them too.
Very cool. Get the inside scoop. We got time for just a couple more questions, my man in the shades.
Where are you at in the writing of the next book?
Where are you at in the writing of the next book? You're a fan favorite, man. Look at that.
I am working on it.
Perfect answer. My man in the back in the white right there.
Who's your favorite comic book hero?
Favorite comic book hero?
Well, I sort of covered that with the Spider-Man, don't you think?
Yeah, Spidey. Right here in the orange.
I know that you draw a lot of historical books, but are there any parts that are from your life experiences, people in your family?
She was asking that you draw from a lot of history. Is there any personal history that you include in the stories?
Not really in Ice and Fire, because it's too different. Now, if you do read the Wild Card books that we referred to earlier, my superhero series that I edit, there's a character in it, Thomas Cudbury, the great and powerful turtle. And Tom, lives in Bayonne, New Jersey, where I live. In fact, he lives at 35 East First Street, where I live. He lives in the apartment where I live. He went to the school where I live. He kept turtles as pets, which I did. But then he developed a kick-ass superpower, which I failed to do. So he's kind of pretty heavily autobiographical, Tom is. So if you wanna see that glimpse into my life, get the early Wild Card books and read about the great and powerful turtle.
You have the power to captivate. That's a superpower.
That's good. That's a good power.
The power to captivate. We got time for maybe one or two more on Iron Purple. I'm sorry.
Advice for new writers.
Advice for new writers. Obviously, a lot of people out here that have a passion for writing and.
Advice for new writers. If you're a science fiction or fantasy writer, those are the fields I know best. Short stories. Start with short stories. I get letters from new writers all the time saying, "Oh, Mr. Martin, I'm 16 years old. I'm writing a 7-series epic fantasy, 7-volume." Don't do that. That's like saying, "I think I'll take up rock climbing. I'll climb Mount Everest." No, start with a hill in your backyard if you're thinking of rock climbing. Start with short stories. I broke in with short stories. Science fiction and fantasy is one of the few genres left that still has a viable short story market. It won't make you rich, but you'll get professional publication. You can send your stories in. The editors will send it back with rejection slips and maybe eventually rejection letters. Which is a step upwards. If they actually write you a personal letter, even if it's no, it means, hey, it got past the rejection slip stage. And then maybe they start buying one. By the time I wrote my first novel, I published like 30 short stories. I'd even won an award for short fiction. So he gave me a heads up when that first novel came out, because it was no longer just, hey, here's a novel by someone you never heard of. But it was more, here's a long-awaited first novel by this guy who published 30 short stories and won awards for them. So, and also, we all start out writing crap. And it's better to work for a couple weeks on some crap and send it out, and then you can work on something new and you get better. If you work for 3 years on a novel and it's crap, you've lost 3 years of your life. So short stories are a good place to improve your craft, to try experimentation, different techniques, different voices, all of that. The other thing is to read widely. Read everything you get your hand on.
We got time for one more question from the fans. The big man in the middle.
What do you like to eat for breakfast?
No, come on, man. That's the big finale. That's the closer.
Eggs Benedict.
Eggs Benedict. Who's got a blockbuster here? Who's going to send us out on a good note? You're very confident over there. Yes.
Writing opened up doors to you, what you never thought you'd be able to do when you started writing.
What opportunities have opened up for you since since writing and this project and other things have taken off?
Well, writing has taken me around the world. In Bayonne, New Jersey, where I grew up, we lived on 1st Street, 35 East 1st Street. My school was on 5th Street. Our family was poor. We lived in a low-income housing project. We didn't have much money. We didn't own a car. We never went anywhere. I lived in a world that was 5 blocks long, from 1st Street to 5th Street. That's the only, every once in a while I'd go up to 25th Street to go to a movie. But, it was books and comic books that took me to other planets, that took me to other parts of this world, that took me to other times in history, to strange alternate worlds. And through the power of imagination. And then when I started writing and publishing that and became successful, suddenly the real world opened up to me. And 2 weeks ago I was at a film festival in Switzerland, and I did a signing in France that 3,000 people showed up for, and I have invitations to go to China and Brazil and Dubai, and I get more than I can handle. Every time I accept one, I get a flood of abusive mail from fans who, why are you going to China? You should be writing your book. I don't necessarily think they're wrong, but I can't spend all my time going to on trips. But I get to go on some, and that for someone who lived in that world of 5 blocks long, that's a great thing. One of the things but really reading though is still even more than real life travel. I love traveling in my dreams and in my imagination and in the books I read. I once wrote in one of the books, and people pick up this phrase, a reader lives 1,000 lives before he dies. The man who does not read lives only one. And that's true. In my books, the ones I write and the ones I read, I've flown to other planets, I've fought aliens and supervillains, I've dived to the bottom of the sea, I've climbed mountains, I've fought duels, I've made love to 1,000 beautiful women, and that's pretty good imaginary life to have lived. More so than, some of the lives that people I knew who are still living in those 5 blocks and never having cracked open a book.
All right, let's wind things up with a quick business and a quick pleasure. Any little glimpse, a little teaser, a little something you want to share with us about what's coming up with the next season, with the next? I'm just going to leave it to you. Oh, any little tidbit, a little morsel we can plant and water and just grow in our own minds. No.
I'll give you a couple. I don't know, some of you may know this stuff already, but for season 5, I think you're going to really enjoy meeting the Martells of Dorne. Particularly Oberyn Martell's 3 daughters, the Sand Snakes. So those of you who got into the Game of Thrones panel know we've cast those 3 roles, and those are really 3 fun characters to see. And I hope you like them, because you're also going to be seeing a lot of them in the Winds of Winter.
All right, let's end it on a fun note. As always, I like to wrap things up with just something simple and fun. You're stuck on a desert island. You can only bring 3 things. What do you bring?
A boat.
Perfect.
A radio.
A coconut radio or a real radio?
I don't believe in a coconut radio. I don't know. And can I bring both Ginger and Marianne, or do I have to make a choice?
You're George R.R. Martin. You can bring whatever you want. Ladies and gentlemen, make some noise. Stand up, turn it up, and keep those hands clapping. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, George.
Thank you.